Hello and welcome to Bits and Pieces, the friendliest cricket podcast. I am Tony, and this is the podcast Camaraderie. Camaraderie, which is what the cool kids call a colonoscopy these days. Colonoscopy, of course, is that procedure where we send a probe up your ass to figure out what's wrong with you. This disambiguation is brought to you by an exasperated KL Rahul. This podcast, though, is definitely more about prostate than prostrate, which is to say, we shan't lie down at the feet of great cricketers. We shall instead kick their ass and ask them to do better. Well, actually, we try to balance both. If you want to get technical, you could call Bits and Pieces a semi-colonoscopy. That's right. We put the pun in punctuation, only the chew in unctuous, and we describe about 83.33% of the action. That is Asian. We have never been accused of putting our listeners into a comma, and I think it's about time we put a full stop to this analogy. Full stop, of course, is referred to as a period, and it's with great joy that we bring you Bits and Pieces in a brand new period, our first recording in 2023. We have been renewed for yet another season by ourselves, and as the friendliest cricket podcast, friendliest? Isn't it supposed to be friendliest? How do you make a typo while speaking? Unless, wait, I actually meant friendliest, which has grown over the span of 52 weeks because we brought you 25 different voices. I'm sure our mathematically attuned, knowledgeable fans are wondering if this is episode 53. Surely that must mean we are bringing you 35 different voices now. Calm down, you smart Alex Stewards. Pause to appreciate your own pun and contemplate your awesomeness. No, wait, I wasn't supposed to read that out. But to keep the math going, we have brought you a new friend who has at least 10 different voices. Harry Truman would have loved him because he's a one-tip, one-handed economist. He calls himself the economist on Instagram, although he does nothing to stick to the norm of an econ. He makes us chuckle with his intelligent takes and makes us with his amazing photographs. The man who can combine economics and football to give you the best thing to come out of the FIFA World Cup 2022. Useless previews TM. He claims he never walks alone, but this man is frowned upon by economists because he puts his knowledge to actual use and watched the Federer versus Nadal match by paying just £7. I used to think I am the preeminent T on Bits and Pieces till I woke up this morning like Amitabh Bachchan to realize I've horribly miscalculated my T's. Please welcome the best brother T to feature on Bits and Pieces, a man for whom you would never say Tareef Baskar. Say hi, Tareque Laskar.
Thank you, Tony. That was very, very kind of you and a very kind introduction. I would like somebody once said that I'd like to meet like all these people that you have described in the intro.
Well done, well played. But moving on from the economy class, if you've been following the news and have general knowledge about the urinator, you would probably be called PGK. But we are a podcast of great sensibilities and have left out PGK for today's episode. We are the podcast that nips such atrocious behavior in the bud, or to put it more succinctly, chop P. The man who is accused of having a live stream going at all points in time, but it's only to do with cricket. A man who is absolutely first class and has only been accused of always being too businesslike about cricket. Agriculturally minded people may tell you that this is not the season for the Kharif crop, but with El Chopper knows, it is always the season for the Sharif crop. The man who puts a gentleman in the gentleman's game. Say hi, Abhishek Chopra.
Hello. Thank you, Tony. Best intro of 2023 for me.
Wow! You came out swinging on. Well played. What a shot. Amazing.
Good.
Also joining us today because of an injury to Sanju Samson, the man who was tricked into dissing R. Ashwin by me and has put penance since. The man whom they call the moral hazard of Madras. The man who proves nominative determinism by always being the first to open. Say hello, Murli Sadgopan.
Thank you so much, man. I did not expect myself to be on it, but I love the intro as always. Appreciate it. Glad to be a part of
I
this.
also didn't expect you.
Yeah, I know. Which is why I was like, is he going to at least
but
not give me an intro this time? But you still managed to come up with an amazing one. Thank you, my friend.
They have to play the field, as Sky says. And finally, the original voice of reasonable sexiness on the podcast, the man who they used to call the editor's dream, because there are zero things you need to cut out from what he says. But on his India trip, turned into the editor's nightmare because there are zero things you can cut from what he says. But also his random 70 rupee earphones from Ghatkopar East made him sound terrible. The prolific watcher of all sports from darts and curling to marble racing, the French-speaking international sports person who questions the powers that be with his phenomenal prowess, the man with the heart of a poet, the brain of a scientist, and an exterior as thick as Gorilla Glass, the always undefeated Srinath Sripat. Say hi.
Hello. Thanks, Tony. I mean, I was expecting that to finish with Gorilla in the Mist, but I have to say it because you didn't. That's where we finished.
Yeah. My 2023 resolution is to not say bad things about people. So we shall not talk about cricket umpires at all in this episode. But over to you, Srinath. What are we talking about?
I wanted to start off by saying this podcast is quite a poetic conclusion or continuation of Tareque and I getting together on some of these things, because we tried to have a podcast and finished with a grand total of 3 episodes.
Oh yeah,
2017.
I remember that one. Yes, the ICL to the IPL of BNP.
Our ICL was called Pod of Cricket, which I think has since been taken by others. So very, very creative search engine unfriendly names continue with bits and pieces. That's where we began. But I want to start off by saying one of the things that I like about a couple of people on this pod, including Choppy, is both Tareque and Choppy continue the good old grand craft of long form writing in this era where we exchange WhatsApp messages and tweets at times.
And stickers.
Stickers, yes, clearly.
So I want to just like throw it to Tareque and ask him about how he continues to do that, because this podcast is bad at cricket summaries, leave alone connecting cricket summaries to economics, right? We are kind of leveling up today, Tareque. So over to you to talk through how you continue to keep doing this, and then we'll get to some of your cricket watching experiences and your sport watching experiences from recent times, because I want to keep it outside of what's happened this week. We'll talk about Sky at some stage, but I want to get started with you.
Right. So the writing is a vestige of me writing for a magazine and earlier as well. So when I started the blog, most of the pieces were much shorter ages ago, when back in, I think, mid 2000s is when I started blogging. But then it naturally spilled over to me studying and teaching economics. So I was just looking for things that are usually good hooks for students, because students on the other side, it's very hard to catch their attention. And that's what kind of forced me into this alley to try and find these connections to do a bait and switch, bring them in, come for the cricket, stay for the economics kind of a situation. So that informed some of the writing.
It's like us watching IPL for Instagram reels, that kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. So and then it just went on from there, because I got into working for a company that's into sport and primarily cricket. So it becomes second nature to look into these things, especially if you're looking at the business side. You have to think about the business and the economics of it. So that's how the writing continues. But as you probably have noticed yourself, some of it also veers philosophical now, which is also probably a marker for advancing age. But at the same time, I kind of enjoy bringing that perspective as well, because I know that there are far better people around to do the technical analysis and everything else. I just look at it through whatever lens I have learned. So and that lens is like
we didn't expect to be praised like that, but go on.
So, but Tareque, you're basically the R. Ashwin of the economics world, right? Basically, like doing YouTube lives and stuff like that.
Oh, I do all of that. That's quite high praise again, because honestly, I think any analogy with Ashwin would be like a pretty big deal, because he's fairly smart. But it's just a question of the writing. I think I started writing. In fact, ironically, I'm doing this podcast from the very room where I started my cricket experience, because I'm back home right now. And this is where I sort of was during the 92 World Cup. My duty was to wake everybody up at 3 a.m. because that's when the New Zealand games would be starting. I was the kid given the duty to make sure that everybody is up and watching the World Cup. So that's where the ingrained love for cricket started from, and cricket has been sort of inserting itself in my life every probably major milestone, I think. So
one thing we don't acknowledge as much on this pod, even though it's like a known thing to all of us, is all of us met through Twitter, right? I don't think there's an exception within this group, and Tareque's no exception for me. Like, I got to know him around 2014, 15, and I think Tony and co, you guys are dated a little earlier than that on Twitter, from your late 2000s, early Twitter India stage. So I think it's kind of very under acknowledged on this pod that we all like sports fans.
That we are all very old now. Is that what?
Also. There's no Kaustubh on this pod, so I wouldn't make age jokes. So I think that's such a very underappreciated part of this, and I think that's something that's really beautiful 15 years into where it is. And Twitter's obviously gone to a different place since then. Now we meet on WhatsApp and podcasts. So that's one of those things that I wanted to call out and ask Tony, for example, because this is Tareque's our 26th guest, right?
Yeah,
Or,
that's right.
And
26th
I think
friend, dude. What is his guest?
exactly. Yeah. So I think the Twitter thing is very underappreciated. And one of the other aspects of this is reading Tareque and seeing some of his Twitter threads. I see Choppy as our in-house version of that, so to speak, before we welcome Tareque into the fold. The main thing, or the big thing about the sporting aspect of it, is all the personal connections that you guys have. And I remember you guys watching Ajaz Patel, was it 2 years ago, live after the pandemic. And this podcast is pretty much a product of post-pandemic reflections and watching sport together. Yeah. So Choppy, I think it will be nice for you to speak through a little bit on the personal aspect of this and how you guys are drawn to writing that much more. I get that this become really, really serious for a bits and pieces episode, but that's kind of the theme that I wanted to start with and then move forward from there.
You want Tony to go first, right? Because
that's as deep as it gets. You don't even know who he's referring to.
Right back.
Pinging back.
Tony, you go first. I'll go after you.
Yeah, okay. I'll just try to set this up a little, because there was an early Twitter, right, which is I think 2008, 2009, 10, probably till about 2013, 14, hell in a handbasket and everything post that seemed like really annoying, right? And I had a newsletter in between which I shut down for mental peace, etc. And like the constant refrain was that, Twitter has gone to the dogs, etc., etc., etc. But like off late in the last 2 to 3 years, purely because of people like Choppy and Tareque, I've discovered that Twitter can be an actually joyous place, right? And I think Srinath, sometime I'd posted an Instagram story which you sort of caught on to, which is that it's not about using social media less, it's about using social media more consciously, right? And I think we've all been enriched so much by the presence of so many networks. The last time we met was when Srinath came about. And if you remember the outro to the last episode, it was basically you guys just, making your way back to the hotel and singing, right? And it was so beautiful just to listen back to after a long period in time. And the thing is that when we met, physically for the first time, it didn't feel like talking to strangers, right? There's none of the awkwardness because not only do we talk through Twitter or WhatsApp, but this podcast has enabled that as well. So I want to say, like, between Tareque and Choppy, you guys are the ones who've sort of made me look at Twitter again and realize that no, it has not gone to the dogs. There is a way to use it consciously, and I definitely enjoy all of your tweets and the long form writings that you do. So over to you, Choppy. How do you do it?
No, I think it's one of those beautiful things where the shared love for one thing and one thing only sort of transmogrifies itself into a much bigger shared connection. And it's the same with Tareque, right? I mean, Tareque would remember that I was the one who gave him this nickname of Brother T. I don't know where it came from, but
I very well remember. Yes.
But yeah, it's one of those things where you don't need much to go with, really, and you just find that one shared bit between two people and then a group, and whatever happens after that is something as cool as bits and pieces. So I mean, we don't take ourselves too seriously on this podcast, but I think we take ourselves seriously enough to realize what this actually means. And I mean, kudos to Nitin and Tony and Srinath and all the people behind this podcast, and the people who really started it and have kept at it for what, 53 episodes now. But yeah, I think the times when we've met or when we have been waffling about something completely random on the WhatsApp group, it's very precious. It's very difficult to find in these times where you have to be part of one toxic fan base or the other, or you have to support one team or the other, or one part of the country or another. So to have someone who's sort of sane but yet not very serious minded, knows how to have fun, etc., like Tareque or like Tony or like Nitin, any of these people, once you get to know them, you really start valuing the power of social media and the power of human connection. There's a lot of hate out there and a lot of negative stuff out there, but if you're able to sort of have the privilege, I'd say, to cocoon yourself into a smaller circle where you don't encounter a lot of it, or you encounter it for the right reasons, I suppose, then I mean, it's a cool place. And I mean, in my case, I'm glad to be a part of this podcast. I'm glad to be a part of just the shared bond that we have, other than the podcast itself. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll continue doing that, and hopefully we'll have more friends and less guests in 2023 as well.
I think one way of looking at it, I'm looking at Murli as well here, because you mentioned arguments and growing up to live with them and understanding that not everyone likes the same set of people and teams. And we have our famous Ashwin and Kohli and Shastri and Dravid discussions forever. Sometimes it gets really nasty. Sometimes like it's like we're missing Hank on the spot, but it's like the biggest one is IPL versus not, right? So yeah. I think that's one of the things I really enjoy about the group and in general, because that's kind of the essence of early Twitter as well. Like you had people who are rabid football fans and very strong supporters of clubs and had arguments and things, but I think that's kind of transformed into a really nice way with the coming together on this group. Murli, I'm sure you agree, but I want to hear your thoughts on how we live with this stuff.
I actually have two parts to this. I completely want to throw out the caveat that this has gotten as philosophical as Tareque warned us right in the beginning. But yeah, zero regrets. I want to tell you something that, so I was discussing with my wife a little earlier, and she says, what is this LLLC? You get some 50 messages while we're watching one Netflix episode. Every 5 minutes, you're getting 50 messages. What is going on? Who are these kids? And I was like, these are the most mature, the most amazing adults there are, arguing about some life-changing things. Please keep your distance. This Netflix episode has ended right now. And she goes, what is wrong with you? I was like, you have no idea. Because I was telling her this beautiful thing, and I'm alluding to that song you guys sang together. Oh man, I got so emotional, I pushed my earphones down. So sorry. So I was I'm alluding to that song you discussed earlier, but I was telling my wife, these 4 or 5 people met in Bombay and they had such a good time that when they sent a voice note and did that video call and I missed both, I felt so left out. I felt so bad that I was not part of this group. And she goes, "Oh my God, you guys must go back many years." And I was like, "I've never met any of them. I have never met a single human being in person, but I feel so connected to them. And cricket unites us in such a unique way. In fact, like Srinath says, I like the arguments more than this. If you guys agreed with everything I said, I may have left the group. I love the fact that there is constant challenge, that people are always willing to very, beautifully disagree and put points and facts in front of us. And I think that educative aspect is why I absolutely admire this group. And I owe it to Twitter. Like, and as many Elon Musk jokes as we can make, every single person here and the larger panel of Bits and Pieces as a whole, I owe it to Twitter, because to date, as much as I see most of the people around me spending all of their time scrolling on Instagram, Twitter is still the first app I open. It's the app I scroll the most on. And of course, even whatever the amount of time you spend on each app, Twitter heavily, outweighs all the other apps on my phone. So kudos to Twitter and to all of you and to Bits and Pieces.
Srinath, I just want to say that you have now a streak of 2. Last podcast you opened with Pant's injury and like how we need to be careful when we speak about cricketers, etc. You've now brought this to a very philosophical point, right? So, and I'm not going to rescue you this time, but I'm just going to basically say one thing, right? And one thing that is underappreciated about this group and the friendship that we have. I think in general, people speak about how men don't get to be vulnerable enough, right? And like that causes not too close friendships, etc. I think one good thing that we have is that we've grown up with Twitter and we've seen so many great people who've like spoken about life experiences beyond cricket itself. But then cricket puts you in the most vulnerable position possible, right? Like if you can imagine that Srinath is getting up and saying, "Dave, veliye poda" to someone, you know how much it helps, right? So I think it's a mixture of both, that we grew up with Twitter, but also cricket helps us to be extra vulnerable, to the point where there are discussions where people sort of call each other out to say, "Listen, like this is not a joke that you should be making," right? Which is also great. So it's about vulnerability, but at the same time, maturity and friendship. So yeah, there you go.
No, and you don't need to rescue me at all, because it's entirely keeping in line with what I had in mind as well. Because like one of the things that resonates a lot with me, especially with Tareque's writing, is obviously you write for yourself, but you're also writing for the reader, and it doesn't need to be like a viral piece that gets a million hits, but effectively you're speaking to this community that Murli and you refer to, which is effectively this group and a wider group of people on Twitter, etc. So again, the vulnerability point is something Tareque writes about very frequently, the personal connection. So I want to throw to like the recent World Cup and some of the stuff he's written previously around the Argentine football team and how it reminds him of his mom's fandom of sport. And we should remember that we're all still talking about sport, which is probably the most meaningful among the meaningless things in life, to paraphrase Ancelotti's famous quote. Tareque, I think the point I was trying to make and what I wanted to get your thoughts on is, as you grow older, and this is not an age joke, it's true of all of us, as you grow older, how do you kind of see sport differently, in the sense that I see in your writing a lot now, it's about the personal, it's about the family, it's about the connection, it's about the childhood, you're in your childhood home now. So how has watching sport in that sense changed for you? And I see that as a very big positive, because we don't talk about how Sky fell down, scooped a big 6 and how that's the greatest thing ever. It's more about what Messi goal reminds you of. You do a lot more photographs now and so on, and what a Rishabh Pant reminds you of when you watch him live, or what a Sneha Rana reminds you of when you go and watch her at the Commonwealth Games live. So how has that changed for you? And I think this will resonate with Choppy as well, as his writing is one of the things that it's kind of very similar to the way you do it.
Right. I should mention Abhishek's piece about watching Ajaz Patel and going back to the stadium after the pandemic, which was a piece that really resonated, because it brought out all the emotions of why we go and watch sport in the first place. So which going back to your question about how it has evolved, so it has gone beyond basic results and let's say the outcomes and things like that. So what it has gone on to now is maybe a wider perspective, because kind of as you grow older, it's those kind of things that give you perspective, and I don't kind of shy away from doing that. There was a time when I would have not wanted to talk about it, but now if I look at a US Open final between a Raducanu and somebody whose combined ages is less than mine, then I kind of know that we are watching a very different generational shift, right? But then I have to sort of give a perspective to it for myself, and I've always believed that we kind of watch sport for the connections, and that's something that has become apparent over the last, particularly I think the last 5-6 years, for two reasons. One, which was the one that you brought out, which is communities built through things like Twitter and podcasts and things like that, which we did not have as much of an access to from earlier, because most of my friendships revolve around that. I have a couple of friends with whom I have a football podcast, and that was the essence of that friendship. These two guys happened to be my students before that. So that, and again, it's one of those things where we are watching football for the sake of football. We have our loyalties, but more often than not, we are discussing sort of like the larger issue, or the sort of the social status of watching sport. And one other thing that has happened, at least with me personally, over the last 4 or 5 years, is that I've been lucky enough to be able to travel and attend a lot of these sporting events in different settings and with different people, and interact with sort of these different communities. And everywhere, the more you see how immediate a connection just the love of one sport or a particular team in the sport can bring out, makes you focus more on the community, which is sort of what I think personally has shifted within me, that now I'm looking at it all through that long lens of community. And that's kind of how I on Twitter, I think I tweet a lot more about sport now than I used to. And part of it is, again, like Tony mentioned, the whole community thing of being in this group where that, okay, this is something that if I put out there are people who would interact, react, and actually be moved. So that's kind of why. Or that's kind
medals.
of the evolution. and give out medals.
Tareque, one thing that I sort of want to interject with is that obviously, like, you have a wealth of knowledge and information in your head, but you mentioned sort of like real bait and switch for your students, which is also extremely enjoyable when you do it on Instagram, right? So I briefly went through your Instagram this morning, and I was like looking at Messi and the alpha horse. Alpha whore is probably an empowered prostitute, right? Of which there should be more of, but ALFAJORE. I'm not sure how you pronounce it in Spanish, but basically the Messi story about incentives, right? I'm not sure if all our listeners have heard it. Why don't you tell us that? And like, how do you combine these, pop culture with the takeaway of an economics behind it, which is the most enjoyable thing for me? Because honestly, like, there are lots of serious writers, and kudos to them. Like, for example, growing up, probably like a cricket match wouldn't be complete till you, or a tennis match wouldn't be complete till you read Sidney's take on the whole thing, right? And you want to be transported back to the emotion of it. But I think, like, I have even greater respect for people who are able to take themselves less seriously and sort of like throw in a joke in there and sort of present it more interestingly, right? So how did you do that? Because like economics is not a field that lends itself to comedy per se.
So I think just one instance on this, when I was in university, so sort of I was doing my PhD in the US. We had a class called Economics Theory of Choice, so which is a very heavily mathematical class. So where this professor from University of Chicago would come and talk about all these ideas, and I looked through them, and because I had a little bit of economics knowledge from before, I figured that these are actually very simple ideas which just are being formally presented through the math. So I was talking to a classmate of mine who wanted some help, and I was sort of trying to explain to her things in probably a language or a frame of reference that she would get. So she was Korean, so I was not sure. We did not have, let's say, the same country, so I can't use the same Bollywood reference or something like that. So I think I don't remember exactly what it was, but I used one of those relatively common pop culture references to kind of explain to her the combination of labor and capital and how do you choose that and things like that. So and I remember her exclaiming that, so why does like Professor Thrainen not do that, like the prof was teaching us? So I said, I mean, he could, I am guessing, but I mean that's how I would look at it. And then she insisted that we go through the rest of the topics, and that's where the sort of the seed of the idea came through, that I look at everything through that lens. It's fun to look at it. The Messi story is not something that was original in the sense that I just read it in a New York Times article. But my first reaction was that, oh, this sounds like very typically economics, because if you give somebody an incentive and there is a loophole, they'll probably exploit it.
I think you should tell the story though, because not everyone
right. So the Messi story was that back when he was in Newell's Old Boys, his coach basically told him that you are great at dribbling and you are an excellent footballer on the ground, but we also want to improve your aerial game. So if you score a goal through a header, I will give you sort of like this 2 alfajores. I think it's alfajores, or alfajores is much better actually.
I'm sorry for ruining that for you, but yeah, alfajores it is now.
We're definitely not raising any questions in Messi's character. So he said it will be 2 if you score a goal by a header, 1 if you score by your foot. So what he did was, because Messi at that time, as we all know, was short, he was undergoing that growth hormone treatment. So he basically, the next thing he did was dribbled past the entire field, because he was really good for his age in terms of what he was doing to his peers. Past the goalie, and then stood right in front of goal, flicked the ball up to his head and just sort of tapped it in and held up 2 fingers towards the coach, saying that you owe me like 2 of the treats now. So there was a great example of that. When you have some kind of an incentive, you want to sort of take advantage of the incentive, which is sort of like the basic lesson in economics you can teach anybody. So, that's how I looked at it. And then I said, everybody knows Messi, so they would like to know an interesting story about him, and that's an easy way to sort of go and connect to an audience. So and that's what happens all the time with me now. I'm that guy who's sort of like looking for economics references everywhere.
Yeah. Including Katy Perry, I believe, which is amazing, right? I think just to tie where we started with and where we are going now, it is, I think you can describe it in one phrase as sky falls down, right? As a cricketer, I think it would have been frowned upon for you to fall down while playing a shot. Literally the sky falls down, right? But he is entertaining people like nobody's business now and doing it consistently. And I think like the future is set for people like you who can combine not just economics, but just like a view of the world, but making it fun also. So I want to say I'm a great fan, and I'm so thankful for I forced you to do that photograph of the Kerala Blasters goal. But thank you so much.
I love doing it. It was so much fun doing it. I had to watch the goal about 50 times, but it was worth it.
Yeah. So.
Tareque, I have one question though. Like, of course, we are a Bits and Pieces cricket podcast, and I've seen some of your Instagram posts just to be prepared a little before, and your Hitler and Rava Idli, and the South Indian in me woke up with like wow, this is the speciality of us being South Indian and all that. What do you think economics can do to improve Indian cricket, man? I have to ask because we're so passionately.
So tell us. It's a great question, and it's something that we actually do dwell on sometimes in discussions in the office and otherwise as well. In fact, I was teaching a development economics course, and I think Abhishek and I had this conversation where I have promised Abhishek to send the case study when I make it about people like Natarajan and so on, who have gotten this option of social mobility thanks to the way cricket has been democratized and the way it has spread, because fundamentally cricket and all these sports are what in economics we call winner take all markets, where basically the benefits, a huge amount of the benefits accrue disproportionately to those who are the superstars at the top, which means that these markets are I think I'm forgetting who was the economist who coined that phrase, was that they're misleadingly attractive, that everybody thinks they can make it as a cricketer, and only a handful make it as a top cricketer who'd be raking in all the money and the endorsements and things like that. And there are so many for whom there is a huge amount of, again, a classic economics phrase, opportunity cost, to actually take up cricket and learn it and devote so much time. And if they're not then able to make it, it makes their lives so much more difficult. Like an example is Praveen Tambe, to take a case, right? Because everybody knows about his story, thanks to the movie. So fundamentally, in winner take all market, the biggest challenge is to try and deliver something for the middle, because everybody's trying to move up to the top tier, but it's a given that they would not be able to. In tennis, everybody cannot be a Federer. So it's the same story in tennis. 50% of professional tennis players do not make any money because they spend more than they actually earn, even if they are sort of winning games on the tour and all that, because there's so much of cost for each of them. And the same is true of cricket, with both sort of like explicit and implicit costs. So maybe expanding opportunities for them to be able to get paid for something that they're investing so much in. So sort of more leagues and things like that, and opportunities, and freeing up those opportunities are the only sort of way I see it, or at least I kind of try to advocate for in whatever capacity.
So, but Chops, and you can, Tareque, you will also know better. Is the system not having money? Because the system looks really rich to me. BCCI as a body looks really rich to me, but the money, as you're saying, is not trickling down. Even I have friends in my 3rd, 4th, 5th division league cricket who live very ordinary lives, unfortunately, because the cricket is not going to do enough. But cricket is where their true passion is. Like, they live Monday through Friday for that one league game on Sunday, and they pull themselves through a very sad, ordinary job to just make the money for their wife and their kids, to go back and play something for their passion on Sunday, and then come right back to their lives, which I found it very hard to digest. I mean, I regret, I was very happy that I'm not as skilled as they were, because being stuck in that is a lot worse than you being not so good at cricket, but playing casually over the weekend and going right back to a significantly set job over the week, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, so I think I'll let Abhishek go first on this one. Abhishek.
No, I think...
Who is Abhishek?
Who is this? Who's this new dude?
Abhishek, tell us.
I think Tareque would agree that trickle-down economics is the biggest scam of all time. So, yeah, I mean...
This is the second urinator reference on this podcast.
Yeah, no, I think with cricket, it's always been, the case that the interest at the lowest level, and I'm taking lowest level to mean two things. One is, the semi-professional or barely professional level, as well as, people in the non-traditional cricketing centers. The money or the resources reach there at the very end. I mean, in the non-traditional cricket centers now, it's perhaps not so much of a problem. Cricket's reaching everywhere because of the stars we have had. But yeah, I mean, we'll take it perhaps back to the topic that Vipul discussed with Srinath and Tony and the others when he was on the pod. But you look at stadiums, man. I mean, it's the same story over and over again, where you can talk about it till the cows come home. Cause is in the cricket for office, I suppose. But essentially, the money doesn't go to the right places because there are too many people in between. It's not, any form of transparency is not there for us to know, why, league cricketers in Madras, for example, are not making money, or even in Bombay, man. Like you have, this Kanga League where if you go talk to the cricketers one fine Sunday, you'll have them working as grade 4, grade 5 employees in some semi-government organization at a very young age, and their passion is cricket, and they want to make it really big, but as Tareque said, they won't, and they are going to be stuck in this loop where all they want to do is play cricket, and nothing will come out of it. So I mean, the only thing that one can do, given that the market structure is perhaps not going to change so much. Shit, who's the economist on the pod? I'm not so sure anymore. But
Tareque is doing Rangoli as we speak. That's
Oh my God.
Okay, we have to take 10 seconds to
Yeah.
appreciate that.
So
Appreciate it.
Srinath mentioned, economics is not no, Tony mentioned economics is not a field where you can have a lot of fun. HR is very unlike that, I guess. The R in HR is Rangoli. No, but I'm saying that the it's going to be the same. I mean, BCCI is not going anywhere. You bring in 4, 5, 6 Lodha committees. It's going to be the same. So within that, the only thing you can hope for is, for example, Kanga League to have like a lot more resources and a lot more money to have payments done through some of these cricketers who slog, every weekend in Bombay to, I mean, for nothing, man. It's the ground is shit. The dressing room is shit. They're barely able to, afford kits of their own. So you hope that, more such stuff keeps happening and money goes down to the levels at which it is needed the most. But I mean, I don't see that happening, to be honest.
I think just to start off where Tareque spoke about the paper that was being published or the dissertation part about the likes of Natarajan, right? That's about 1 or 2 levels above what you guys are talking about. It's about City League cricket. It's about Division League cricket. The fact that the TNPL and the KPL and all sorts of these state leagues happen and some of these guys even have a chance is a recent improvement, right? The money was not even going down to this level 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And for me, the bigger issue is there's a parallel to be drawn with the Premier League on the other side, where Premier League attracted the best talent in the world. I think there's more than 100 countries, footballers from 100 countries have played in the Premier League.
Clarified, Premier League is Indian Premier League now.
Oh,
Please.
Shots fired.
Said football and all, but yeah, fair enough. But I think there's a parallel to be drawn there with the lack of success of the English international team, despite so much money and talent and players and investment going into the English Premier League over a 30-year window. I don't know if that is worth delving into immediately for Indian cricket, because we keep making these semifinals and things, and last 2 episodes we've been crying about how 2022 was the worst year for Indian cricket, and India finished at number 1 on the win-loss record table across formats. So the lack of world titles for me is an equally big problem, as much as the lower division cricketers don't get paid and things. I think that part is at least improved to a degree where Natarajan can at least aspire to have a living from the game. But on the other side, this keeps happening over a 10-year window, and we've been doing all sorts of things and not winning a single trophy.
Yeah.
Even New Zealand have won something, Tony.
Wow. No, but just to round up this section, Srinath, do you think this is the right time to ask Chops for an update on the Nepal Premier League?
Absolutely. That's where we finish.
Okay, I'm going to get all serious and give you an update. The Nepal Premier League is no longer happening because I mean it's the best place to end it at, because there is an Indian company who was given the contract of running the entire thing, and 50% of the payment had to happen before the tournament and 50% after. The players started the tournament. The pre-tournament payment didn't happen, and they kept playing. And then, I mean, I think collectively everyone knew that it was no longer going to come pre or post or whatever, and so it's no longer happening.
They all got James Faulkner very famously.
James Faulkner, yeah.
Man, Choppy, to summarize everything that you have said so far about nothing changes, we can just describe it as becoming a Chetan Sharma, right? You could complain about everything in the world. We could fire him and then bring them right back to do all the things over again.
Yeah.
Oh, India, you gotta love you. The fact that we're now screwing people internationally, we're screwing Nepal Premier League and all. We don't want to just screw our own. We're screwing neighboring countries.
Yeah. So, South Africa, you're next.
That's a preview to the SA T20. Very good. Lovely.
Yeah. I want to ask Brother T about his episodes of playing in England. I think it's a fascinating story. I remember parts of it because I think he's mentioned it on Twitter once or twice. But I really want to understand, what that experience was like, and did he see baseball coming up when he played there in the local cricket? And
you mean baseball?
Baseball, yeah. Sorry.
Baseball, yeah.
I was wondering if US had league cricket and Tariq somehow played at Temple University or something.
Oh no. No, so that was after Temple, and that was in London. So the incident Chop is referring to is something that happened in 2018. I was at a summer course in London School of Economics, and I was watching, I think, the England-Tunisia game one evening at the LSE Student Union Bar, and there was this guy who seemed clearly not a student of LSE. He had just come from somewhere outside, I guess, because the beer was cheap there. And we were just discussing that I was explaining cricket to him, but he was not really a cricket person. He's more of a football person. And England happened to win the game against Tunisia. So he said, we should watch the next game together as well, because you brought the lucky charm. So, we should make England win the next game. I said, sure. So we went and met for the next game. Incidentally, the next game was not the group game that was on Sunday, but the game against Colombia, which was the pre-quarterfinals. And he got his friend along, Mark, who's a huge cricket guy, and we just got talking. And obviously, you all know what happened in the Colombia game. It was utterly dramatic, where England finally won a shootout. These two guys, I kid you not, were on their knees praying by the end of the shootout, and they thought I'm some kind of demigod who's about to make England.
Sorry to interject, but in a penalty shootout, if anyone should be praying on their feet, it should be the Colombian footballers, because as dark humor as it is. Sorry, go ahead.
So, essentially, after that, Mark said, "Do you play cricket? We have a team, and we want you to come and play for us." I said, "I've not picked up a leather ball in about, I think it was 10, 12 years or so. The last time I played with a leather ball, and that was the first time I was playing with a leather ball." So he said, "Never mind. This is sort of village cricket level. It's 4 out of 10 at a best. You just come. We just need somebody to complete the team." And that evening, I did not think much of it, but that evening somebody emailed me saying that, I understand that you have spoken to our mutual friend Mark, and I emphasize on the point mutual friend because I had met Mark about 4 hours ago.
Brother Mark,
said,
to use a Tamil movie reference. It's cool.
Whoa.
So from there, they sent across a whole team list saying that, you are coming, this is where you have to come, and who's doing the teas and things like that. So I was like, okay, this is happening, this is real, because they're talking about the teas now. So I bought like a whites for the game, because they're told that you'd have to come in whites and everything. And I met Mark at a midway point. He took me to the game. There was another gentleman who was coming who drove a cab, so he sort of picked us up in the cab and took us to the ground. We played with them, and I think what was very remarkable about that I was meeting all of these people for the first time. I was not great at cricket any which way, but they just accepted as if it was just absolutely natural, and they gave me a cap and everything. This club is called Trinity Oxley Cricket Club, and you just for every game you play, I think you pay them like a £15 like a common fee for taking care of the teas and things like that, and that's that. The rest is all fun. They play a 40-over game. I did not bat because I told the captain immediately that please put me at number 11 because I cannot bat to save my life. But they did give me a bowl, and I think there was like an 11 or a 12-year-old kid. We were playing some team called Bedford FC, Bedford CC. And he tried to take me on over mid-off on a full-length delivery, mishit it, or probably did not have enough strength in the arms to clear the mid-off fielder. And I was celebrating as if I had got like a wicket in an international game. Never mind that the kid at the other end was 11, which reminded me of my dad absolutely fuming at Ian Botham in 1992 when he got Sachin out. He was like, that kid is like half his age. Why is he celebrating like that?
Good one.
I'm
Amazing.
reminded
But
of
just
one
to
of your-
quickly get you to switch hats, Tariq, or to give editor Srinath something to do, what is shoe leather cost?
What was that again?
Oh, wow. Okay. No. Okay. I think it's an economics term, dude. Shoe leather cost. Isn't that a thing? Oh, wow. Okay. Let me explain what shoe leather costs to you, Tareque.
Interesting anecdote about
Uh,
shoe leather cost. Go on.
shoe leather cost is basically, I believe it is when you like as kids growing up, you had a bike and you had like 100 rupees. So you'd always like fill petrol for a liter, right? But then like to circle back and refill, you would have to go to the petrol pump again. So shoe leather cost comes from the terminology that you have to like go back to refill and your shoe leather is getting worn out periodically. I think this is a good time to get you to pivot into Weim's boots economics theory, which is perhaps a better.
Oh
better
yeah,
title.
yes, yes. Or I mean, not only Weim's boots economics theory. I recently found out that Albert Camus used to play goalkeeper because that was the position that where your shoes would get worn the least. So
Oh, wow.
he did not have
What a
money
man.
to.
Wow.
So he decided to play like I found out from I think one of Eduardo Galeano's pieces that's the reason why, because he was too poor to afford shoes. So he would want the one that he had to last as much as
Amazing.
possible.
Wow. Okay. Who knew Albert Camus was an econ? There you go. Sorry, Srinath. I was interrupting something meaningful you were saying.
Not a lot meaningful, but I was just gonna say about Tareque dismissing that 11-year-old kid in the league game. I was reminded of one of his other pieces where Tareque is watching a game with his father and Imran Khan's bowling, and he's bowled an Indian batter out, and his father screams at the screen, "Son of a tiger!" That's what he said. And it's like Tareque eventually went and dismissed the son of another tiger. This is like the conclusion.
Saif Ali Khan.
Oh man, that was good.
Nice.
Okay.
But you
Nice,
did go and play with them, play for those guys again, like next
again
year.
again in 2019, because the first thing I did after I reached there in 2019, I'd gone to watch the World Cup, in fact, and I told them that if they're waiting for a game, I would love to come, and they immediately said yes, you absolutely should. And that game was turned out to be a disaster. That's where I scored the 0 of 4. The leg spinner that came in, pitched outside leg stump. I knew where it was heading. I could do nothing about it. It took the topper off. And recently I was playing cricket, and I put a photo because I was wearing the Trinity Oxley shirt while playing in Bangalore. And I think Mark follows me on Instagram, so he saw it, and then he sort of sent a snapshot of it to the guys on the group, and they're absolutely thrilled that thank you for repping the club like across the world.
Yeah, very nice. No, I think this whole thing about village cricket, and I don't know if you follow Annie on Twitter. Annie Chave is, I think she and her father run this club in England called Exeter FC, and I mean the concept of teas is just amazing. They make amazing food there every single match, and some of the stuff that's been written about English village cricket and the fun element that it has is quite amazing. So yeah, I'm very glad you got to experience that while you're fiddling with your controls.
What's the state of tea like in Portugal, Murli? Having played in the Portuguese elite teams.
Elite is a beautiful word to describe the Portuguese cricket league, because I play in the top flight league in Portugal. Below that top flight league, there are no other leagues. So there is only one league.
Both elite and light. Yeah.
As classy as it gets, and there are a whopping 340 people who play cricket in Portugal, and all 340 play in this league. So it's a very nice league where you really find people who are truly passionate. But those village cricket videos on Twitter, you will find a few of those things genuinely happening as well, where the ball won't even go 10 feet into the air. It's a straightforward catch, but they won't just drop the catch. The batsman who halfway has walked the pavilion because he's going to be out, he will miss the run out. The guy will walk back in and play the next ball. I've seen those things happen. So it is a mixture of both. But I'll tell you one thing. There are some, again, no offense to anybody of any age, There are some 45, 50-year-olds who come and play. I have to call it out, okay? 45 to 50-year-olds who come and play, who give their 150%. But it's so sad that it still be like 10, 12% for the rest of them because they won't be able to really reach the ball or come and bowl with enough intensity. But they give their 150% because they do not want to stop playing. And that is so admirable. Like I genuinely strive to be one of those guys in 10 years.
I think this to Murali's point, I see that a lot here as well. And it's slightly bigger playing pool because there's loads of British expats and, they all play cricket wherever they go. The one thing that is better here is you get biryani for lunch and not tea and scones. The British famously have a very pedantic about scones being dipped in cream first and jam next and which order and all of that stuff. So with biryani, it's very easy. Put your hand in and start tulping as much as you can. Especially if you're batting second, you don't worry about it. So that's the one improvement on English cricket culture in continental Europe. And it's also like absolute delicious top drawer biryani because there's subcontinental people, but the variety is astounding. There's Indians, there's Pakistanis, in some cases there's the Sri Lankan version as well of this. So it's kind of it's the best part of the day sometimes.
There is a raisin infested Bangladeshi biryani as well, which I would warn you about. It's an acquired taste. It's pretty good. Yeah.
The Dam Maro Dam League.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't have snakes, it's fine.
Okay. I didn't have much else, but there's one little thing I want to do with Tareque and get you guys' thoughts as well.
No, I mean, you'll edit this out obviously, but we should round up the action from the week maybe at the end and you splice it in wherever you want to. But go for the question.
Hey, Tareque, you're not getting late for your class or anything, right?
No. I have a little bit more time. No problem.
Cool.
Yeah. We'll probably do 10-15 minutes, Tareque, and wrap up. That's cool, right? Cool. Okay. One of the other things I wanted to speak through as Tareque is on the pod as well is he is one of the champions of women's cricket on Twitter, if I can say that, because it's now getting increasingly fancy to follow the women's game and keep track. But I remember from around 2014-15, when not a lot of people would follow the women's game. And the story that keeps coming back to me is your Commonwealth Games live experience, Tareque. You went and followed the Indian women's team in Birmingham last year. I want to touch on that a little bit and also speak through how much that has changed for you over, let's say, a 7-8 year window, because Vipul, Tony and I were at the India-Australia women's game a few weeks ago. And I remember watching a game with 35 people at Brabant, and here we were watching a 12,000 packed arena with every last ticket sold in Bombay, which was absolutely heartwarming. I've repeated this like 20
also,
times. But I think
quick shout out to the, I want to see the advertising hoardings along the fence, which was the only thing that kept us informed of what was happening in the game. And I think, Srinath, you mentioned ITW has something to do with that. But
you guys do that, right, Tareque?
Yeah. The on-ground advertising, pretty much anything that happens in India, if India plays at home, most of the on-ground advertising rights is with us. So we kind of get the clients on those boards.
Yeah, no, sorry, I sidetracked Srinath's question around women's cricket and how you've been following.
No, I was just going to complete by saying that, I've said this 20 times across different forums and podcasts, but I think absolutely merits saying it because I at least didn't think it would happen in my lifetime that we'd watch like a packed Indian stadium for a women's game of any sort.
Yeah, so I think in terms of the experience, the Commonwealth Games experience was excellent because most of the games were fairly packed with all sorts of people. I think I went to all the India League games and the semi-final and final. I think all of the league games had 80% plus tickets sold. I think the way they approach it there is also different. There's so many families and kids coming in. It was great to see an equal audience in terms of male versus female. So that was great to see. And for a lot of the families that I spoke to, they have been following
men's cricket for the most part, but because I think the first brush I had of this was when I went to watch the 2017 World Cup final uh, at Lord's, where I was seated next to a family who had traveled from the Midlands just to come and watch India in the final, and they told me that they had not really followed the team before this, and because they got to know that they're in the final, they're following them. So I think the profile of the team has definitely been raised, and the way, particularly because the way the game is marketed in England, specifically the England's women's team, which is why I think the semi-final was a complete sold out game. I think there were people who were sitting next to me who had come from London to watch that game, just for that day. So the experience. So I have not really watched any women's cricket on the ground before 2017. So incidentally, in a way, of all that I watched on television, my first ground experience was the World Cup final, which happened to be such a huge occasion and was such a big deal in terms of raising the profile of the game. So that I think also subconsciously put into me this idea that there is obviously great potential for this. I would not really call myself a champion. There's so many other people who follow the game much more closely, who talk about it much more. But I partially was driven by those kind of people and the accounts on Twitter who are doing such tireless work in terms of bringing out what's happening in the women's game every single time. Is why I now sort of seek out these experiences wherever I go. I'll be very honest with you. The first time I went and tried for the World Cup final ticket was because I surmised that it would be easier to get the World Cup final ticket of a women's World Cup than it would be ever of a men's World Cup. And I think we've come a long way from there to me booking the Commonwealth Games final in advance because I thought, oh, the tickets might run out.
Yeah, and that's the story of transformation, right? It's like half a decade barely, but it's almost a lifetime in terms of how much it's changed. And what I mean is more in terms of the visibility that women's sports, that you give women's sports, as much as people cover it, because there's various degrees to this. There's cynicism that women should never get paid as much as men because it's not as popular. That's one side of it. And there's people who consume passively. And then there's people who actively promote it, and there's people who cover it. So you kind of fall into one of the top two tiers, which I think is super important for the average Indian fan at this point, even before we have an IPL. So it's not just like the World Cup finals and the Commonwealth Games, but it's more like the day-to-day, which again is a larger debate around Olympic sports as well. People follow when there's medals, but otherwise it's not much visibility. So that's one thing I wanted to cover.
Is there enough journalism around women's cricket though, Tareque? Do you think there's enough people covering it? Do you think there's enough?
I think there isn't yet. There is so much more that can happen. I know I follow a lot of people on Twitter who are doing it, but a lot of them are doing it with very little resources or very little let's say access to grounds and data and things like that. They are maintaining almost sort of their own databases and information to kind of let us know what's going on in some of the second-tier tournaments or some of the domestic scenes. So I would think there is a huge sort of potential and gap there for the coverage to be amped up.
All right, super.
Just to add to what Tareque is saying, I think it was Vinayak, who's a common friend for Tareque and me, who had compiled this massive list of people who really talk about women's cricket on Twitter. And I mean, Vinayak himself is one of them. And you see that a lot of them, while they are perhaps going to some under 19, under 21 tournament that's happening in India, and it's the proverbial a man and a dog or a woman and a dog story as far as audience for those matches is concerned. Sometimes there's no official entry even, and they're the ones covering it somehow. But if it comes to, let's say, the World Cup that's coming up, or even the Commonwealth Games, those very same people, because of lack of funds, resources, and not being affiliated to any official body like Cricinfo or some newspaper, etc., they're not able to make it to those matches and to those tournaments, which I mean, is perhaps where we would want to be at some state. I mean, the people who cover the domestic game with that much passion, when there's nothing much to go by in terms of returns or incentives. They are the ones who perhaps get the chance to go to those tournaments and cover them live. And freelancing, like it is in the men's game, really becomes an option in the women's game also.
But the passion journalism is a very difficult thing to do, right? I mean, we've seen the likes of the Rachnas, the Sohinis, etc., who cover so much on Twitter. There are a bunch of people who cover some of the local women's cricket as well, but you don't write content about it. People don't put posts about it. And like you said, they may never get entry. For example, Rachna is literally going to buy her own ticket from London to come see the women's IPL and the World Cup in India and go and write about it purely out of passion. This may be very hard to do for everybody. And some people who clear flair and love for the game may just not be able to do it because they won't be able to afford to become journalists.
Yeah. True that. Completely agree.
Over to you, Srinath.
No, it's hard enough for the fan to get access and buy tickets. And you can't be doing journalism as a side thing or covering. It's completely out of passion. And if as a fan you're not able to find out where the IPL final is less than 2 months or just over 2 months from the final, it's there's too much there to solve for an individual.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone knows WTC equation? We can do 5 minutes on the week's action.
Somebody-
I don't know, Tony.
Yeah, I was just doing that. Hold on.
Share screen.
Yeah, I was just trying to format the columns more.
Oh,
meaningfully.
shit.
Oh, man.
Tony,
Let
too
me
much stuff.
The
Let me do
economists
it
are
for
getting
this.
excited.
Let me do it for you guys. Hopefully, like this will
Spreadsheets and economists,
so,
right?
So
Yeah.
practically, it's going to be India versus Australia final, guys. Like I don't know, like unless you're a betting man and a terrible one at that, it should be an India versus Australia finals. Australia is way ahead of anyone else. I'm not sure if you can see my browser as well, but they're practically on 75.56, right? Even if they lose the next 4, they'll be around the 60% mark. So what you see in column E is basically the
Win percentage.
percentages that they'll end up at. And the only team that can append Australia at this point is Sri Lanka if they win 2 matches in
New Zealand.
right? And they'll reach 61. So the worst case of Australia is that they get beaten 4-0 in India, and then Sri Lanka beat New Zealand 2-0 away, in which case Australia are knocked out and it becomes an India versus Australia final. I am not going to bet on that. I am a betting man, but I'm not going to bet on that. But here is India's equation.
You mean India Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka final. Yeah, he means India.
India Sri Lanka final. Yeah, sorry. So this is India as it stands right now. And if India get 1 win and 3 draws, they'd go up to around 57, go down to around 57%. If they get 2 wins and a draw, they go up to around 59%. And if they get 3 wins, they go up to 62.5%, right? Correspondingly, South Africa has a 2-match series against West Indies, which I'm guessing they win. And even if they win both, they end up at around 55.55, right? Which means practically India just need to win 2 matches, right? And
Tony, what happens if India lose the BGT 4-0? I'm just asking.
Fuck it, dude. Then why do we care about the WTC then? Bring on
This
the
podcast will be 50 minutes of crying.
Two IPLs this season. That's all. If India lose BGT 4-0, several things are going to happen, including Chetan Sharma getting sacked yet again in a span of a year.
So the first phase was when he was getting paid to do the selection job. Second phase was when he is offered to do it for free. I think if this happens, he's going to pay money to select people.
Yeah. I think the key here
Group
is
therapy.
as new captain Hardik Pandya has said, it is a crime to bowl no balls, especially more so because India's actually lost points this WTC to over rates, right? So as long as we don't get any negatives, we practically just need 2 wins. England leading the negatives chart, as you can see. And world beaters, New Zealand are the second worst team after Bangladesh. So, yeah, I mean, for
Maybe there's another
England.
final to be played there. New Zealand, Bangladesh.
I'm sure.
Wooden spoon.
Yeah. So yeah, early prediction, bits and pieces, jinx notwithstanding, India versus Australia final, and
It's at
probably
the Oval, right?
Yeah.
brother Srinath is going to be there to represent bits and pieces.
Mace.
I'm just imagining I'm running with the hypothesis of a 4-0 BGT loss and an Australia versus Sri Lanka final or an India versus Sri Lanka final at the Oval. And I'm wondering what the Sri Lankans would be thinking. How did this team go there now? What was happening? We were having some political problem. We were hating them. The podcast as a Sri Lanka would be wondering, man, our team went off to the final. What do we do now?
Asia Cup champions, man. Daniel Alexander universe. That's what happens.
Absolutely. So only two teams this WTC have not won a series at home. One is Bangladesh, which is the other. I'm going to throw it to Srinath.
New Zealand, of course. I
who
can't
who
remember
drew
them winning.
1-1 versus Bangladesh? I don't know when this happened, but apparently
No,
was
there's a beautiful win. Who was that? Ibadat Hussain, da?
Ibadat Hussain.
Yeah.
Superb bowler. What a
Yeah.
bowler.
That was
There you go.
Bangladesh's only win of 2022, incidentally, in Tests.
The Mount
PGK
Maunganui.
is tearing his hair out right now, despite no mentions of Ashwin. Bangladesh beating New Zealand at home is like beyond what he can handle.
New Zealand
Speaking
and
of
Pakistan.
speaking of New Zealand not winning, there was a proper thriller in Karachi, and it ended in a very
Oh
typically
yeah,
comic.
wait, sorry, I'm sorry. Pakistan has not won a series at home either, right?
Yeah.
Pakistan
For,
had their worst.
No,
almost
so
2
it
years.
was not Bangladesh. It's Pakistan and New Zealand. I'm guessing Bangladesh has won a series at home, probably, possibly.
Probably. I think. Yeah.
Should have done
That's-
better research.
there was a nice tweet from Usman. Obviously, a very grim tweet for Pakistan cricket fans, but they beat South Africa a year and a half ago at home, like with a pace heavy attack and a pace strategy and a nice pitch that produced results. And then they switched to slow dead tracks, which woke up on the afternoon of day 5, and then England owned them, and New Zealand almost owned them, which would have been a proper disgrace for Pakistan at any point. But like at home in Karachi with Sarfraz doing what he did for 2 games, that would have been a comedy finish to the whole thing.
Yeah. Too much.
Nice. Choppy is
You
wordless.
have to. Go for it. You have more
No,
words
for
here
the-
than-
So,
No,
if
I
I
was-
may add one bit of economics to the Karachi ending, I mean, what AB de Villiers pointed out about the spinners and the pacer thing, which was a great case of what we call moral hazard in economics.
Yeah.
That the exact thing that you tell somebody not to do, you're creating incentives for them to so do exactly that, which is promising to bowl spinners, and then if the team's actually hitting the spinners and getting close to the target, you can always bring the pacers back and end the game right there.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but I mean, like this is one of the rare instances where Nitin Sundar and me are on the side of the ICC saying, I think it's fair enough, dude. Like, why do you let players decide? It has to be like an objective benchmark, and umpires call the game off at whatever point in time, right? And if a team wants to bowl fast bowlers, it's their choice at the end of the day. I mean, like we would have liked to seen a result, but I think it's fair only that it ended in a draw.
Yeah.
Also, because I can't see the ball thing is super subjective. I can announce it at any.
Correct.
Saudi is bowling, I can't see the ball. Suddenly, Amrar is bowling, I can see. Saudi, I can't see. So it's very tough to make that differentiation.
I don't know how this rule was applied when India could just bring on Kumble and achieve both, right?
Oh man! Last scene, Ashna was performing Kumble's action. Wait for this in the BGT. But
Okay.
I think the other point that happened this week was Steve Waugh brought up that point about how cricket is competing with other sports, and it's absolutely ridiculous that you can't bring on lights to have a day 1 or day 2 or whatever it was, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Like, can like should play continue? Not necessarily on the last day, but like during the game, and like should fans have to go home after only 40 overs of action?
I think the only problem with that is the visibility of the red ball under lights is, I mean, if you've played at any level, it's terrible. It's absolutely
You can't see.
Yeah, I mean, you can't see the ball at all. And I don't know. I mean, Steve Waugh could have done it in his own time, but he never did it himself. So, I mean, right, it's not really possible in a place like, Pakistan, for example, which anyway has huge, whatever, fog, mist, smog, whatever you want to call it. Whatever live tests we have seen from, let's say, 2004 when Dhoni scored that 100, the visibility is poor, throughout the day sometimes. And so to expect cricketers to, play beyond what the light permits them to, I don't think it's ever going to be possible. You could have some sort of a ruling. I don't know if it's possible to implement it, that if the light goes bad beyond a point, you bring the ping ball into the equation or something. Have test matches in which involve both those colors of balls. But I mean, it's very difficult to implement it. And I think the light meter is, as you mentioned, a fairly objective thing.
Yeah.
As long as it says, there's a benchmark set, and after that first day you keep implementing that benchmark, I think it's fine. I don't know about this thing, where you're competing with other sports, etc. Every sport, I mean, you can talk about, how footballers are, whatever moral hazards Tareque talked about, all of them dive around like, crazy. So every sport will have its own idiosyncrasies, and if we keep sort of trying to, do one more thing or another thing here, there, whatever, to make sure that we are competing well, that's never going to happen. There are more ways than that to sort of bring cricket up and spread it across the world. This just seems like pushing it a bit too much to me.
Yeah, no, when you spoke of switching from red to pink, an entirely different thought crossed my mind, which is that no, I don't think you know where I'm going with this, which is my partner has actually lent the voice to the intro in this. She's the one who says TV umpire, director, etc. But basically, we were watching the World Cup together, and the football World Cup, and she was like, why she thought it was a terrible tackle and the guy deserved a red card. And she's like, why isn't that guy being given a pink slip? So,
Go home.
Reminded of. Yeah, no, thankfully, like finance guys don't have podcasts where they make fun of marketers, but like we can do it the other way around. So just to round up this section, right, there is a quote inscribed in every American court, I want to say, which reads, Fiat Justitia Ruat Cilium. Do you know what it stands for?
Don't give the pink slip to economists.
No. This is a much earlier callback. So Fiat Justitia means let there be justice. Ruat Cilium. So Fiat Justitia Ruat Cilium means let there be justice even if the sky falls down. Right. So I think it's even if the heaven falls, but I think it's a nice way to round it up. Yeah.
Yep. I have
Play
a
outro music
quiz.
as Skyfall theme.
Oh.
Well done.
Rolling
Good
in the
honor.
deep cut, Sridhar.
I have a quiz question that I've been meaning to ask. Name this Australian cricketer. Okay. Home test batting average better as of now, better than Ricky Ponting, Greg Chappell, Steve Waugh, Justin Langer, Usman Khwaja, Bob Simpson. Away test batting average worse than Damien Fleming, Bruce Yardley, Kerry O'Keefe, Nathan Horitz, Xavier Doherty, Tim Zorer.
Travis Head.
Labuschagne.
Travis Head is the right answer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to point out how the man of the series in the Australia versus South Africa test series, which ended today, was given to David Warner for some 230 odd runs, out of which 200 were scored in one innings. And there is no, like, you know how presenters at the end of the match, announce these awards that देखो वो भी contender था और वो भी अच्छा किया और उसने भी अच्छा किया, but man of the, and it's like a nice build up, because you're counting all the people who did well, but not at that level, and every name Isa Guha took was a deserving winner. And I kept wondering, okay, if this is not there, this guy is also not, who are they going to give it to? And it turned out to be David Warner. It is almost as if David Warner was also, looking around that Mera Naam Liya. Next level.
And Warner
but
started
like,
off with a beautiful quote, right? So when she asked him how did it feel, etc., Warner started off by saying, "I already said all this in Melbourne, but." And then that's how he started the whole thing.
But the funny thing is, how many runs do you think Head has made in the series?
I think 230, 240 odd something.
213, which is the same as Warner, right? But neither of them is the highest run getter in the series. You know who that is?
I
Kyle
would say
Verreynne.
Khwaja.
No, Khwaja is number 4. He's scored 209 at a
Steve
better
Smith.
average.
Labuschagne
Yeah,
or
Steve Smith has got 231. So yeah. I mean, I don't know like what is the benchmark on which this is given, but yeah, one impactful innings counts for more apparently.
Yeah. And also, I mean, on a good note to end the pod with, the Australian spin bowling was absolutely terrible today. I hope they are able to repeat the same performance when they come to India. Seven Cricket, I think, which is the broadcaster in Australia, which has Ricky Ponting in its team, commentary team. They literally had a very nice graphic where they showed a pizza outside the off stump for the right-hander, where there was a rough basically. So they called it a pizza, and they said that if you pitch on the pizza, it will spin, turn, bounce, this, that, whatever. And somehow Nathan Lyon, Ashton Agar, and Travis Head kept missing it repeatedly. And the South Africans were able to go on the back foot every single ball almost, and defend it safely. So yeah, I mean, good signs for India. I hope they keep doing that, and when it comes to the BGT, we don't lose 4-0 as I've predicted.
Australia versus Sri Lanka. Let's do it.
Hey, but there were 4 tests in this series, no? Or only 3?
3.
Okay, cool. Yeah. But I think someone asked a question. When was the last time Australia won in Sydney? A test match.
When Australia won in Sydney.
Who
Must have been
was
in
the
England.
last? Wasn't that the draw in the Ashes?
Surely the one,
No,
the
no.
Ashes.
The
Ash was the draw, no?
I think that was a
previous
draw, right?
Ashes.
We also gave a draw.
Previous Ashes, long ago.
Oh,
So
previous
India
Ashes.
they didn't win. England
No.
they didn't
Previous
win. South
Ashes was
Africa
also a
didn't
draw,
win.
right?
New
When
Zealand.
James Anderson and I think Stuart Broad blocked it out at the end.
Oh.
Yeah,
Man.
we don't know the
Wait.
answer to this.
This needs to be checked.
This needs to be checked. Yeah, there you go.
What a
Sydney
man.
Test records cricket.
Oh, yeah. It's live action happening, folks. So,
Yeah.
so Chops crafts his tweets. You think it's easy. He makes it look easy, but
Yeah.
Seeing the sausage being made, right?
2020.
Wow,
New
2020.
Zealand. Yeah.
New Zealand.
New Zealand. man.
But like against top teams.
Well, then they beat England innings in 123 runs in 2018.
They would have beaten Pakistan, I'm assuming.
That was before that.
Everybody has beaten Pakistan. Yeah.
On that statistical note, who's talking?
Emma.
Okay, right. That's as good a note to end the pod for this week. Thank you, Tareque, for joining as our newest friend on the pod, and we hope to have you more often, as frequently as you can make it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Srinath. Absolute pleasure to be here.
And as we let Tareque go to his Sunday class for his students, say bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
And thank you, dear listener, for joining us for the 53rd episode of Bits and Pieces. Remember to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify. It keeps us going and bring more and more friends from Cricket Twitter and elsewhere onto the pod.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
And if you want to be on the pod, just drop us a tweet. We're not precious about our content or our knowledge. Please come on board.
Please introduce the handle, Tony.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
We've
yeah,
got a
yeah.
new Twitter handle, which is at BNP_cricket, which will go into the show notes from now on. Didn't I add it last week? Did we? Oh,
No.
terrible editor. Yeah, but this week we shall add it. Please follow us, and we shall keep you posted on things about the podcast and beyond. Hopefully, that's our resolution for 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. Signing off once again. Say bye, Sridhar.
Bye.
Bye.
Full circle.
Bye. Bye.
Very good.